While the narcissist shouts to be seen, the super empath listens to understand. On the surface, one appears loud, commanding, and in control, while the other seems quiet, reserved, and often overlooked. But that is the first illusion. Because in truth, the empath's silence is not weakness. It is wisdom wrapped in restraint. It is the strength of someone who does not need to speak loudly to be heard. It is the power of one who feels so deeply that they can read entire volumes in the pauses between another person's words. The narcissist thrives on attention. They need it like oxygen. Their world is built around external validation, admiration, and control. They wear a mask perfectly crafted to seduce and deceive, but beneath that charm is a hollow core, desperate to be filled. The narcissist fears vulnerability. They avoid it at all costs. To show weakness is to lose power. To acknowledge pain is to lose control. So instead they project their own emptiness onto others. They belittle, manipulate, and gaslight, feeding off the reactions of those around them. The super empath, on the other hand, doesn't seek to control. They seek to connect. Their gift is their sensitivity, what the world often labels as too much. They notice the small shifts in tone, the slight change in body language, the energy behind a smile. They feel the weight of words that were never spoken aloud, and in a world that often rewards superficiality, this depth can feel like a burden, but it isn't. It's a kind of emotional X-ray vision, an ability to see what others cannot. What makes the super empath powerful is not just their sensitivity, but their self-awareness. Unlike the narcissist, who runs from their inner world, the empath dives into theirs. They wrestle with emotions, they confront their pain, they evolve. Every wound they've ever endured becomes a lesson. Every betrayal becomes a mirror. And over time, this reflection builds resilience, an inner fortress of emotional strength. Not the kind that shouts or demands to be recognized, but the kind that endures, silently, unshakably. The narcissist sees the empath as prey, easy to control, easy to manipulate. But they make a fatal mistake. They confuse kindness for weakness. They mistake patience for submission. But the empath isn't weak, they're just waiting, watching, processing. And when the moment comes, when the fog clears and the mask slips, the super empath doesn't retaliate with rage. They respond with distance. They walk away. And that quiet act of reclaiming their peace is more devastating to the narcissist than any confrontation ever could be. The empath's power is in their ability to feel everything and still choose peace, still choose clarity, still choose themselves. Their strength lies in what they don't say, in the grace they carry after surviving storms, in the compassion they offer even when they've been broken. The narcissist needs the world to see them as powerful. The super empath simply is. And that is the kind of power that doesn't need an audience. It just needs truth. Empath versus narcissist is not just a clash of personalities. It is a battle of energies. One walks into the room and tries to command it, bending the environment to their will, seeking control through subtle and not so subtle manipulation. The other enters quietly, almost unnoticed at first, yet their presence brings calm, clarity, and healing. This conflict is not played out with swords or screams, but with invisible currents of emotion, attention, and power. And in this silent war, it is not volume that wins, it is depth. The narcissist is a master of performance. They know exactly what to say to pull people in. They shapeshift to become what others want to see, all while hiding their true motives. Behind every compliment is a hook. Behind every gesture of kindness is a calculation. Their need to dominate stems from a deep inner void, a lack of true self. To them, others are tools, mirrors to reflect back a grand image they work tirelessly to project. They crave control because without it, they fear they will disappear. The empath, in contrast, doesn't need control to feel whole. They do not manipulate, they intuit. They sense what is going on beneath the surface, not because they try to, but because they can't help it. Emotional truth echoes louder for them than spoken words. And instead of shaping others to fit their needs, they adapt, absorb, and reflect what others truly feel. This sensitivity might seem like a vulnerability, but it's actually a form of inner intelligence, a quiet wisdom that allows them to see through illusions. Where the narcissist throws energy outward in an attempt to dominate, the empath pulls energy inward to understand. The narcissist energy is chaotic, always reaching, always needing. The empath energy is grounded, calm, and still. It doesn't fight back with aggression, but with awareness. And that's what unnerves the narcissist. Because no matter how much they try to provoke, manipulate, or confuse, the empath eventually sees through it. They feel the disconnect. They recognize the emotional inconsistency. And once they awaken to the truth, the balance of power begins to shift. This is not a loud confrontation. The empath doesn't explode. They dissolve. They pull their energy back. They stop feeding the cycle. They become a mirror the narcissist can no longer distort. And in that silence, in that stillness, the narcissist feels the one thing they fear most: powerlessness. Because their energy depends on being seen, being praised, being in control. The empath's power comes from being aligned with truth, not appearances. This battle of energies is ultimately a test of endurance. The narcissist burns bright and fast, exhausting themselves trying to control every outcome. The empath, through self-reflection and growth, becomes resilient, unshakable. They don't need to win the argument, they rise above it. They don't need revenge, they find peace. And that peace becomes their shield. In a world full of noise, the quiet strength of the empath is a force the narcissist cannot defeat. Because while control can command attention, it is presence that transforms. And that transformation begins, not in domination, but in depth. The narcissist fears the empath for one powerful reason. The empath sees through the mask. In a world where appearances are everything to the narcissist, where charm and illusion are used as tools to control and deceive, this ability is deeply threatening. The narcissist craves admiration like a drug. They build their identity around how others perceive them, carefully curating every word, every action to draw praise, attention, and submission. But the empath is not easily fooled. They feel what others miss. They notice what is unspoken. And when faced with a narcissist, their intuition begins to sense the gap between the image and the truth. To the narcissist, people exist to serve their ego. They seek out those they believe they can dominate emotionally, people who will admire, agree, and obey without question. On the surface, the empath may seem like the perfect target. Empaths are naturally giving. They listen, they care, they want to help. But what the narcissist doesn't realize is that within that gentleness lies a power they cannot manipulate. Clarity. The empath might stay quiet at first, but they are always observing. They absorb energy, patterns, intentions. And when they begin to see the cracks in the narcissist's performance, fear sets in. The narcissist fears being seen for who they really are: fragile, insecure, emotionally immature. Their whole life is a performance, and the empath sees backstage. The very presence of someone who feels deeply and understands instinctively becomes a threat to the narcissist's carefully constructed identity. Unlike others who might be fooled by their charm or feel intimidated by their dominance, the empath sees the wounded child beneath the mask, the manipulator behind the smile, and that kind of truth is unbearable to someone who survives by deception. This insight becomes the empath's silent weapon. They don't need to call out the narcissist publicly. They don't need to scream or expose them. Just the act of seeing, truly seeing, makes the narcissist uncomfortable. They start to lose control. The usual tactics don't work. Gaslighting becomes ineffective. Guilt trips lose power. The empath no longer reacts the way others do. They begin to detach emotionally, withdraw their energy, and reclaim their inner space. And this terrifies the narcissist, because once they can't control your perception of them, they can't control you. The empath's strength lies in their ability to stay grounded in truth. While the narcissist spins webs of confusion and manipulation, the empath begins to anchor themselves in clarity. And when the moment comes, when the illusion fully collapses, the narcissist is left exposed, powerless, and alone. Not because the empath attacked them, but because the empath simply stopped playing the game. This is the ultimate fear of the narcissist: to be irrelevant in the eyes of someone they thought they could control. The empath doesn't need revenge. Their presence is enough. Their understanding is enough. Their truth is enough. Because when you see through a lie and no longer feed it, that lie loses its power. And that, more than anything, is what makes the empath the one the narcissist cannot conquer, and the one they fear the most. There comes a moment in every empath's life when something shifts. For years they have carried the weight of other people's emotions. They've absorbed sadness that wasn't theirs, pain that wasn't spoken, tension that filled the room like smoke. They've been the silent healer, the emotional anchor, the one who understands when no one else does. But over time, that constant absorption begins to take a toll. They feel drained, confused, and lost in emotions they can't even name. And then, one day, it happens. The awakening. It doesn't arrive loudly. There's no dramatic announcement. Instead, it's subtle. A quiet moment of clarity. A single thought that rises from deep within. This pain is not mine to carry. And with that realization, the empath begins to transform. They stop trying to fix everyone. They stop trying to make sense of chaos that isn't theirs. Instead of absorbing pain, they begin to alchemize it. They begin to understand that their gift isn't just in feeling deeply, it's in transmuting that energy into something powerful. This is the turning point, the moment when the empath begins to set boundaries not out of anger but out of self-respect. They learn to say no without guilt. They learn that compassion doesn't mean self-sacrifice. They understand that helping others shouldn't cost them their peace. Where once they would have stayed in toxic cycles, trying to heal the unhealable, now they walk away, not because they don't care, but because they finally care enough about themselves. The empath's awakening is a spiritual evolution. They begin to see their sensitivity not as a flaw, but as a compass. Their intuition sharpens, their clarity deepens. And they start to understand their true power lies in presence, not in fixing, not in absorbing, but in simply being. They become aware of their energetic field and they learn to protect it. They recognize emotional manipulation and they no longer fall into its traps. They sense when something is off and they trust that sense, even when others try to convince them otherwise. This transformation is quiet but profound. Where once they were reactive, now they are centered. Where once they were overwhelmed, now they are anchored. The empath begins to use their gift with intention. They create space for others without losing themselves in the process. They listen without becoming consumed. They support without becoming saviors. And this is what makes them truly powerful. People notice the difference. The narcissist, who once saw the empath as an easy target, now senses a wall they cannot cross. The empath is still kind, still gentle, but no longer accessible to toxicity. Their energy has changed. They radiate something new, self-worth, presence, peace, and that inner shift affects everything around them. The empath's awakening is not about becoming hard or cold, it's about becoming wise. It's about realizing that true empathy includes yourself. And when an empath finally honors their own soul as much as they've honored others, they become unstoppable. That's when everything changes. That's when the healing begins, not just for others, but for themselves. The most dangerous move a super empath can make is not to fight back, not to scream, not to expose, but to silently detach, not out of spite, not from bitterness, but from clarity. It is the calm choice to let go, and it is this choice that completely disarms the narcissist. For so long, the empath has been entangled in emotional chaos, trying to understand, to fix, to love someone who was never truly available. They gave and gave, believing that if they just poured more compassion, more forgiveness, more patience into the relationship, the other person would finally change. But that change never came. Instead, the narcissist thrived on the empath's endless supply of emotional energy. Every reaction was fuel, every tear was validation, every plea for understanding was a signal that they were still in control. The empath's emotions became the narcissist's stage, and as long as the empath stayed engaged, whether in love or in pain, the narcissist felt powerful. But something shifts when the empath has had enough. Not an explosion, not a breakdown, but a quiet internal click. The moment they realize they are done. This is where the power of walking away begins. The empath doesn't need to announce their exit with drama or final words. They don't need to explain themselves or beg to be heard. They simply stop participating. They stop explaining, justifying, defending. They stop reacting, and that silence speaks louder than any confrontation ever could. It sends a message the narcissist cannot handle. You no longer have power over me. This kind of detachment terrifies the narcissist, because their control depends entirely on emotional engagement. They need the empath to stay hooked, to question, to argue, to cry, to hope. Without that, the narcissist is left alone with their emptiness, and nothing frightens them more than being irrelevant. When the empath walks away, they take the light with them. They take the warmth, the understanding, the emotional richness the narcissist was feeding on. And suddenly, the narcissist is faced with the truth they've been trying to avoid. They were never the strong one. They were only surviving off someone else's light. For the empath, walking away is not just about leaving another person. It's about returning to themselves. It's about reclaiming the energy that was once scattered, the self-worth that was once questioned, the inner peace that was once disturbed. It's a declaration that they are no longer willing to shrink themselves to fit into someone else's broken world. They don't leave with resentment, they leave with wisdom. And that quiet, grounded decision becomes their greatest form of strength. The narcissist may try to provoke them back. They may hoover, guilt trip, or pretend to change, but the super empath who has truly detached no longer responds. They've learned the difference between love and control, between empathy and self-betrayal, and they choose themselves, not because they're selfish, but because they finally understood the cost of staying. Walking away is not weakness, it is mastery. It is the moment the empath stops bleeding for others and starts standing for themselves. It is the moment they no longer need closure because peace has already arrived. The empath's journey through narcissistic abuse is nothing short of a spiritual war. It begins in confusion, wrapped in love that feels conditional, kindness laced with manipulation, and affection that comes with a price. The empath enters with an open heart, hoping to heal, to help, to love unconditionally. But what they meet is a mirror that only reflects back what the narcissist wants them to see. Slowly they begin to lose pieces of themselves, silencing their needs, doubting their intuition, questioning their worth. At first it's survival, just getting through each day without breaking under the emotional weight. But what the narcissist doesn't realize is that every tear, every betrayal, every moment of darkness is quietly building something powerful within the empath. Over time, the empath begins to see the patterns. The charm followed by cruelty, the praise followed by punishment, the gaslighting that made them question their reality. And though the process is slow, the awareness grows, one painful realization after another. They begin to understand that the problem was never their love being too much. It was being given to someone who couldn't receive it without needing to control it. This is when survival starts to evolve into awakening. With that awakening comes the shift. The empath stops asking why the narcissist hurt them and starts asking why they stayed. They begin to turn inward, not with blame but with curiosity and courage. They confront their fears, their patterns, their wounds. They begin to heal not only from the narcissist's abuse but from the unhealed spaces within themselves that allowed the narcissist to stay so long. This is the foundation of mastery. The empath learns to set boundaries, not walls to keep love out, but doors that only open to those who walk in truth. They begin to speak with clarity, act with intention, and love themselves with the same depth they once reserved for others. The very pain that once silenced them now sharpens their voice. The scars left behind do not fade, but they harden into armor. Not armor that hides the heart, but armor that protects it without closing it off. What once was emotional fragility becomes intuitive strength. The empath doesn't stop feeling deeply, they just stop sacrificing their peace for people who feed off chaos. They don't stop loving, they just become more discerning about who they give their love to. And what once made them feel broken now makes them unstoppable, because now their heart is not just soft, it is wise. Their soul is not just open, it is grounded. Their presence is not just warm, it is powerful. They have gone from being the target to becoming the force, from surviving manipulation to mastering emotional truth. They no longer fear the narcissist because they have faced the darkness and come out whole. The narcissist's greatest weapon was confusion, and the empath's greatest power is clarity. And now the game is over. The empath walks not with fear but with purpose, not to prove anything, but simply to live freely, truthfully and fully. From survival to mastery they have risen, not in spite of the pain, but because of it. In the quiet war between the empath and the narcissist, the world often only sees one side, the charm, the performance, the illusion. But beneath that surface, a silent power is rising. The super empath, once underestimated, once emotionally entangled and drained, undergoes a profound transformation. Through pain, they gain clarity. Through betrayal, they gain wisdom. Through detachment, they reclaim their power. This is not a story of revenge. It's not about defeating the narcissist with noise or anger. It's about the empath awakening to their own worth. It's about realizing that their depth, their sensitivity, their capacity to feel is not weakness. It is their greatest strength. And when they stop absorbing pain and start transmuting it, when they walk away in silence rather than scream for justice, when they choose peace over chaos, they become untouchable. The narcissist depends on control, but the empath, once awakened, no longer plays by those rules. They don't need validation. They don't chase closure. They are the closure. Their silence, their boundaries, their healing presence says everything that words cannot. They stop being a mirror for the narcissist's illusion and become a reflection of truth. So, if you are an empath, know this: your heart is your weapon, your scars are your armor, and your peace is your rebellion. You were never weak, you were learning. And now, you're rising. From survival to mastery, your journey isn't just about breaking free. It's about becoming the version of yourself the pain was preparing you to be. This is your power. This is your moment. And the world will feel it, not through your noise, but through your presence.